So what if I told you that you could earn your private pilot's license months faster and keep thousands in your pocket? Would that be something that would interest you? I suspect so. So that's what we're going to talk about in this video. Let's dive into it. So when it comes to flight training, you basically have two paths. You can go part 141 or you can go part 61. And if you go part 61 like I did, you also have two choices. You can go to a flight school, or as many of my students did, you can work with an independent flight instructor. And that's what I want to talk about in this video as it compares to going through the more traditional flight school path. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to dive into the costs. So a typical 141 school actually has an enrollment fee of $1,000 or $2,000 according to the research that I've done. And of course, with an independent CFI, there is no such enrollment fee. The only money that you're going to pay is for aircraft rental and instructor time. So speaking of aircraft rental, larger schools typically have larger fleets of aircraft. These aircraft are typically newer, which can have some benefits, and that is going to drive their overhead up. Whereas with an independent CFI, you may be able to get access to lower cost aircraft. So maybe instead of paying $180 to $200 an hour, maybe you can be training an aircraft in the $150 to $165 range. And as you might imagine, over the period of, or over the accumulation of all of those hours that you're going to fly, that can add up to a meaningful amount of money. The next thing is the instructor rate. Again, big school, bigger overhead, probably going to pay $75 to $90 or even $100. I've heard as high as $125 in larger markets. And then if you're getting your instruction from an independent flight instructor, that's going to be probably less expensive. It depends on the market you're in, how busy the instructors they are in that particular market. I used to charge $75 per hour. I know some people do it for less and some people do it for a little bit more. So not a huge difference on a per hour basis. However, on a total hours flown, it can actually add up to be a pretty substantial difference, because when you're training with a flight school where there's multiple students flying the aircraft, you're going to encounter all sorts of delays. One of the students who trained with me came from a Part 141 school, and his biggest complaint was that 50% of his flights were canceled every single week. That was either as a result of aircraft maintenance or the very restrictive minimums that the schools had. So if the crosswind was over just a nominal amount, they couldn't go flying. If the ceiling was lower than what I would consider to be a pretty nominal amount, they wouldn't go flying. And so cancellation after cancellation drove them absolutely bonkers. And then plus with a Part 141 school, you have a very, very structured syllabus, which can also drive up your overall costs. So flight school on national average, $14,000 to $18,000 for a private pilot certificate. And independent CFI path, as long as you're not taking forever to become proficient, probably more in the $10,000 to $13,000 neighborhood, which is quite a significant savings. Now let's talk about the speed to getting your certificate. So according to surveys that I found when I did the Googles, the median at a 141 school is 6 months. And for working with an independent CFI, it can be substantially faster than that. If you're able to fly 3 to 4 or even 5 days per week, you're looking at probably somewhere in the 8 to 12 week neighborhood, which, as you might imagine, is a pretty significant savings. So why so much faster? You've got flexible scheduling, and you're not having to wait for stage checks. If you don't know what a stage check is, they're a part of that regimented 141 syllabus, and you can't skip them. And so you might end up waiting, and as it was told to me by my student, there were times when he was waiting 3 weeks for a stage check, and you can't keep flying beyond about a 3 or 4 hour buffer until that stage check is done. So guess what? You're grounded for the 3 weeks that it takes you to wait for the stage check, whereas working with an independent CFI, that would never happen to you. Number 2 is the same instructor on every flight. So no time lost for rebriefing or redoing lessons. You're working with the same instructor day in, day out, and so you're making rapid progress. And then number 3 is the ability to combine ground and flight into half-day power sessions. Now, ground is a whole separate topic over and above this video. All I will say on ground is unless you need an instructor to read you a textbook, which I don't understand why people would need to do that, I think the far better way to go for ground school is to use an online ground school like Gold Seal. You can go at your own pace. If the weather's good, the weather's bad, night, day, weekends, whatever, you can go as fast as you want. And that is also going to save you a substantial amount of money versus paying an instructor to read you a textbook. So there are some hidden advantages as well that might not be obvious to you. Number 1 is the personalized syllabus. So when you've got a one-on-one instructor-student relationship, the instructor can absolutely customize the syllabus, because Part 61 is customizable, to meet your weak spots immediately without delay. Number 2 is aircraft choice and club discounts. So if you are not at a big box school with the latest, greatest, shiny new planes, chances are you're going to have that lower wet rate rental that I talked about earlier. Then we've got number 3, which is pay as you go cash flow. So it helps you to avoid the interest rate on the loans. Now, Part 141 schools, not always, but most often, people are getting big loans to go to these schools because that's the only way that they're able to do it. And with an independent flight instructor, you don't necessarily have to get the big loan because you're not committing to a certain schedule, although I do believe training more often is better. But nonetheless, that may help you to not have to get as big of a loan and therefore pay that much more money in interest. And then number 4 is stronger mentor relationships. So Indy CFIs, they're oftentimes going to be able to open doors to other rentals from other aircraft owners. Maybe when you're in the time building phase of your flying, you know, us Indy CFIs, we might say, oh, well, I've got my friend Jake over here. He's got an old 150. It's a little sketchy, but you know, it's really inexpensive to fly. Big school, that's not going to be available to you. So keep those things in mind as well. All right, let's bust a few myths. Myth number 1 is, don't airlines prefer Part 141? Well, no, they don't, because hiring minimums is based on your hours and your check ride pass rate. It is not based upon your school type. Number 2 is structure keeps me disciplined. Independent CFIs use a proven syllabi, and then they adapt that syllabi to meet whatever your needs are. For example, there is a nationwide network of independent CFIs that are run by an individual. It's run by an individual named Joe. I don't own the network. I didn't create the network, but I've referred quite a few students into that network. And if you'd like to get referred into that network and try and find a CFI, there'll be a link down in the description below where you can do that. And I have never received even a single complaint from anyone that I've ever referred and paired up with or helped to match up with an independent CFI. So all of these CFIs, what the point I'm trying to make is that all of these CFIs, they are operating from the same syllabus, but because they're Part 61, they have the ability and the flexibility to adapt the lessons of that syllabus to you and your needs on a day in and day out basis. And then myth number 3 is, well, quality varies. And sure, if you don't vet your CFI you don't understand about them and so forth, then sure, your quality can vary. But one of the things that I know with the independent network of CFIs where I've been referring people is they're pretty darn picky about the CFIs, and they make the CFIs agree to all use the same syllabus. So there are quality control mechanisms in place. If those mechanisms weren't working very well, I would assume that I would have got a complaint from somebody I've referred by now, but that has not been the case. So now let me give you a quick example of this. So one of my students, he was able to get to his PPL certificate in 52 hours over an 11-week period of time, and he spent just over $11,000. My student, who came from a larger flight academy, told me that his PPL took him about 6 or 7 months, and he spent almost $16,000. So that is a pretty substantial difference. I don't know about you, but I don't like to burn extra money if I don't need to. All right, so hopefully this has given you a kind of behind the scenes look at the Indy CFI route, which is part of the Part 61 lane on the training highway versus the Part 141. And there are a lot of other nuances, I suppose you might say, and I've covered that in some of my other videos. But in this particular one, I really just wanted to stress that I think that for the average student who is looking to get their certificates as quickly as possible, like I did, without breaking the bank, like I did, that you're going to be far better off working with an independent CFI. And as I mentioned, we now have independent CFIs. I shouldn't say we, I'm not part of it, but the independent CFI network now has CFIs all around the country. They have a huge variety of aircraft. Some of those CFIs are mobile, and they will come to you if you're willing to train 5 days per week. So if you're interested in learning more and getting paired up, again, there's going to be a link down in the description that you can click, and there's an FAQ, and it'll take you to a page of my website, and you can learn all about it. And if you decide that you want to talk to the training coordinator, you'll be able to do that. So thank you very much for watching. If you have questions, please do leave those down in the comments below, and I will be sure and answer them as best I can.